So welcome everybody to the November 2025 housing market update. It's been the longest full government shutdown in the history of America, and we're going to talk about how that's impacting the housing market, amongst some other things. So let's jump right in. I have a slide set up for you on what's actually taking place in terms of the government shutdown, what is really being impacted, right? Because we don't want to just rely on news, media, making us, a little bit crazy and hectic. Like, let's focus on what the facts are. Okay, so 30 days plus and counting. In fact, this is the first time ever in the history of the housing market update that I've mentioned a government shutdown in successive meetings. Usually it's done before the next one starts. So it is truly the longest full shutdown in U.S. history. The ripple effects are growing daily across local economies and housing markets. There's no question about that. I wonder how the cancellation of flights is going to impact travel expenses and families moving for the Thanksgiving holiday and all that stuff. Hopefully they can get that back in order before there's a major problem there. So here are the housing programs that are in limbo. The FHA and the VA loan closings some of them have been delayed, okay? But it's not like they're not happening, just some delays. The USDA rural home loans have halted, supposedly. Which could be a problem for, affordable housing type of segments of the market trying to get loans, right? So it seems like the shutdown is really affecting, the affordable housing, the lower end of the housing market, which obviously is the end that needs the most help. So that's a big problem, and they need to fix it. Flood insurance also has been impacted. NFIP, which I think is the National Flood Insurance Program, I think that's what it stands for. They can't issue new policies while the government is shut down. And existing coverage has a 30-day grace period. High-risk areas are vulnerable during hurricane season, so that's a problem too, because we are in the midst of that. Thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't seen any major hurricanes this season, like we have had in the last few years that have caused tremendous damage in regional areas. So that's the update on what's really taking place with the government shutdown. I thought that was important to note. Okay, now I want to next jump into statistics. There are some very interesting things to see here. Let me just get this set up to full screen. Things to see here. Let me just get this set up to full screen. Okay. I believe you're still seeing my screen, so I'm going to roll. New listings are still at kind of an all-time low. You can see this red line. 2025 is the red line. This light blue is 2024 in all of these charts. And you'll see here that the red line is down. We were up a couple of months here, but right now during the month of October, it was down again. So not really a big movement in terms of actual inventory coming on the market. This I find to be interesting. We were hoping that units sold would continue its trend of increasing year over year, but it didn't. It flatlined basically in October. It was the lowest number in the last 6 years in October here locally in our local area. And pretty much the same is held true nationally, which I'm going to show you some stats there in a minute as well. Sales price. I think what's notable here is that, yes, sales price has been steadily increasing since 2019. That fact hasn't changed. But the pace in which it has been increasing has really lessened. It's not increasing as fast as it was in previous years. And you can see very simply by looking at the red line versus the blue line, and look at the variance that you had between 23 and 24 as we were heading into the fourth quarter of the year. It was a major price increase, but not so much of an increase from 25 to 24. Okay. So prices are, not increasing as fast as they were in previous years, which I think, quite frankly, is a good thing. Days on market. This is another good indicator. You'll see here. Check this out. Days on market had been going down pretty much since 2019 pretty consistently, but you can see the red line here is starting to increase over a series of years for the first time in a long time. So days on market is creeping up, which means that it's a little bit harder and taking a little bit longer for sellers to get those homes sold. And this next one also kind of shows that as well, which is the sold to ask ratio. You'll notice for the first time in several years. It looks like all of 22, the orange line, there was 1 month that was below the 100% line. Every other, well, that's not true. Here's 22. It dipped down here at the tail end of the year as well. But you can see the last few years, we really haven't had much below 100%. But for the first time this year, in October, there are the average asked sold ratio is right at 100%, which means that the amount of bidding wars over asking price have decreased. Okay, so that also shows a little bit of a tick down in intensity in the marketplace. Okay, all right. Now, I want to also show you some national housing stats as well. I like to just show these every so often, just to kind of keep things in places, from a national perspective, how have these statistics been going around the country. So you can see in 22, there was 5 million units sold. This is the NAR projecting 4 million, basically flat from 24 to 25. My prediction is we're going to be lower than we were in 24. And my other prediction is 26 is not going to look much better. So we're off by 1 million transactions in the United States of America. And the reason why 1 million transactions less in the housing market is significant to the overall economy is because the housing market in general represents almost 20% of America's GDP. So every home sale that happens is a big deal because it creates work for painters and plumbers and landscapers and moving companies and title companies and realtors. And, imagine everybody that touches a new home transitioning from one owner to the next. It's a big deal. There's a lot of economic activity that it creates. So this is why some other businesses that are tied to our industry may be soft as well for the last few years as well. So it's important that we get those transactions back up to a good pace. Right now, we're at a pace that's really back 30, 40 years ago. Sales price here, you can see it was all the way back at 386 average price in 22. It's projected to finish off at 415, 225. So prices have been on the rise pretty substantially. Now we're going to shift gears from statistics here, and I want to show you, I've broken down a few articles, one from the journal, two from the journal actually. And let me get this set up the right way. So this is interesting. It really pertains more to the rental market, which is part of the housing market, right? Because every human being needs housing. And this is interesting because there has been a major trend of the construction of new rental units throughout America for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. And they've been coming online really fast as investors look for ways to create value for their investment money. So there is a shift happening. Supply is greater than demand. Record apartment construction has slowed, rent growth, oversupply taking longer to absorb. Now, if you were to say, well, that's not, why is it still so hard to find a rental apartment in Warwick, New York? Well, Warwick, New York's a tiny little example, right? These are national numbers here, but it eventually hits every marketplace, right? So incentives that are at an all-time high: free rent, gift cards, paid moving costs. 30% of rentals, Zillow is reporting this. 37% of rentals offered concessions in September to get them rented. That's a pretty high percentage. Job market pressure, and this is a big one. Unemployment for ages 20 to 24 is at 9.2%. That's pretty high. Many young renters are delaying moves or moving back home. Now, this chart over here that I included is showing you the variance between the general unemployment rate and the unemployment rate of those that are between the ages of 20 to 24. Now, my sons are eventually going to be in that 20 to 24, and I'm going to spend all sorts of money sending them to college and all sorts. So it doesn't make me happy and comfortable to see these variances and that kids from 20 to 24 are unemployed. But it is what it is. We have to be realistic and understand that. So that impacts the rental market. It impacts the housing market, right? So the job market, okay, watch the job market and watch job reports and unemployment rates because it's very important. And that ultimately translates into the housing market as well. Okay, now regional hotspots for rent cuts. You're seeing down here that the deepest discounts are in the Sun Belt and the Mountain West, basically. Austin, Denver, Phoenix are at the top of that. And but one good thing that's happening is because there's more availability for rentals, it means that there's more pressure on price, downward pressure on price, which also makes it more affordable for people to live. So that's a really positive thing here, right? That's the silver lining of this whole thing. And that ultimately impacts consumer price index, CPI, and inflation, right? So CPI is cooling a little bit based upon the affordability of rentals, which is a driver of the metric in and of itself. So that's a good thing. Now, one other thing that I wanted to make everybody who's a follower of the housing market aware of is this. This is interesting. It's another article in the journal. Renters are conning their way into luxury apartments. Now, there's really no benefit to fraud and waste on any level, right? It just creates more lawsuits. It creates the court system to be filled up. It creates insurance claims and the rest of it. So this is really hyper focused on Atlanta, but anything that happens other places could be happening in your local marketplace. So if you're somebody who's a landlord or you're a realtor, you need to pay attention here, because you're the ones dealing with people and helping them get into units and accepting them as tenants. So there's a glut, and this is happening in Atlanta because there's a glut of high-end apartments and shrinking affordability housing. So it makes it ripe for fraud, right? So there's some people out there on social media promoting apartment hacks using fake documents. So these fraud packages are sold for anywhere between $250 and $1,250. And for that amount of money, you can get doctored pay stubs, employment letters, fake social security numbers, credit profile numbers to mask bad credit, so on and so forth. So tech-enabled trickery is happening. This is a bad thing about AI, right? Is AI and Photoshop make it easy to forge things. So that's what's happening there. And landlords are, the reason why they're getting in is because landlords are slow to adopt technology that can prevent this sort of thing from happening. So basically the scam, what it is renters are applying with fake info. They're getting approved. They're moving in, sometimes on a promotion, sometimes on a free rent, and they're just not paying rent at all and just waiting for the landlord to evict them. So maybe sometimes they're getting a year's rent free. And a lot of times the landlords can't even seek a judgment after the fact because they didn't even give them real info from the first place. So it's a real problem that everybody should be aware of. All right, let's go to the news. So the housing market news today, if you were to just do a simple Google search on housing market news, it's going to be overtaken by this idea from the Trump administration to create a 50-year amortization, a 50-year loan for a home. Okay, so we're going to talk with Amy Green of Quintessential Mortgage Group about this new loan program and about loans in general. So Amy, let's bring you in at this point so you can talk a little bit more about it. So a 50-year loan, huh?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition. I'm not a big fan of it. I ran some numbers, so let me show you that, then you can make your own decision. Do
Okay.
you mind if I show you a few things here?
Not only do we not mind it, we'd love to see it.
Okay, great. Well, entire screen, I guess. Okay, so
There we go.
you got it? Okay, so basically, when you're also right now, like if you go with a 30-year versus a 15, the 30-year is going to be a higher interest rate. So I'm just comparing apples to apples right now, just to show you guys the difference. But if it goes to a 50-year, most likely it'd be a higher interest rate than a 30-year. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So right here, right, 30 years, 6.5% on 400,000 loan amount. You're looking at total interest of 510. If you do a 50-year same interest rate, which it won't be, anyway, you're looking at paying almost twice that in interest.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it cost? Right? What's the savings? I come up with about $273 a month difference. So, like I said, I'm not a big fan right now, but if it gets people out of rentals and into homes, then perhaps it would be a good thing. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Well, my thoughts on um my thoughts on debt in general is that real estate is probably the best place to get debt, and all other debt is really not great. Or all other debt is bad. And the reason why I say that is because with real estate debt, you can write it off. It's a tax deduction. It helps you get a home or an investment property in which those historically are appreciating assets as opposed to depreciating assets like a car or many other things that we may take on debt for, consumer debt. So in general, I'm okay with real estate debt, provided that the borrower is able to be vetted and proven that they can afford it. I think that's where our housing market went into a deep depression 15 years ago, is because they weren't being properly vetted, and there were people in general would be given loans that they couldn't afford, and it was causing a lot of problems, and it really caused economic turmoil throughout the globe. So that's no good. So I think, look, options are okay. Would I personally take out a 50-year mortgage? I don't think so. But I feel like if rates were to go back down to 2 or 3%, would it make sense for somebody to get a 50-year mortgage at 2%? It might, because that interest rate may never come around again. And so I think that you may see them, maybe not now. It might not work right now because rates are where they are. But if they come way down again, which I don't foresee happening anytime soon, that could be a thing that would be helpful.
Okay. So, just a quick update on rates. We're in really good shape, right? Powell dropped rates again by 1/4 of a point a couple weeks ago. And it translated into basically a slight difference and a slight decrease. I'm sorry. And the 30-year fix, just want to show you what happened over the past month, right? Can you see that?
Yes, we do.
So we're in a good place. We're still in the low sixes. I think that's a great rate, historically speaking. And I say, if you can buy and you can afford it, do it.
I agree. I agree. I think one of the important things that a lot of people don't consider with home ownership is it's an inflation hedge. It gets you into, again, an appreciating asset. If you're renting, you're paying rent, and that rent is likely going to go up every single year, and you're going to be at a market rate forever. When you buy a home, you are paying a mortgage, yes, and you have expenses and maintenance items and stuff like that, yes, but you're also paying into an appreciating asset, which is a hedge against inflation. That's why people who are deep in real estate holdings have done very well through this high inflation period. Their wealth has grown substantially, while those who don't own real estate, their wealth has shrunk in this high inflation environment. So real estate, there's not many reasons not to own real estate. It should be a goal of everybody. And the more that we can do as a society to help people get into home ownership, the better off it is.